Alright, we're back. It looks like everything's pretty much finished draining off. Get this oil filter off here. I'll wipe some of this oil off. The oil filter itself is, of course, going to be full of oil. Unless you've got your pan right underneath it, you're going to want to keep that thing upright until you get it to a pan.
I'd like to take this opportunity to remind you, make sure you dispose of your used oil and your used oil filter properly. Take it to a service station or somebody who collects used oil. Don't throw it in the garbage. Don't pour it down the drain. I'm sure most of you already know that, but just in case you didn't. Okay, now make sure you wipe off your drain plug really good. Make sure you don't have any grit or anything on there. I'll go ahead and wipe off some of this excess oil here. Go ahead and snug this up. Now don't get that too tight. We'll hit it later with a torque wrench. Generally they're about 16 to 20 pounds, but check the specs for your vehicle. Make sure you know the proper torque and torque it to the proper specification so you don't drain your oil out all over the road. And I'll get the oil filter ready and we'll be right back.
What he's doing right now is what you would call priming the filter.
You gotta fill it up until it reaches the top, and then you'll notice it slowly drains back down as the filter element itself soaks up the oil. Now, in some vehicles you may not be able to do this because the filter may be sideways or mounted in some way that the oil will pour back out of it when you go to install the filter. But since this car, the filter's mounted in such a manner we can do this, I'm going ahead and doing it. So,
now, like we mentioned before, the oil that's going in here is a 25,000 mile oil. The filter, like we said, is a 15,000 mile filter. You'll have to change your filter before actually changing your oil. But Amsoil does make a 10 and a 15,000
Actually, that's a 7,500. 7,515,000.
7,515. So if you wanted to keep things simple, to just change your oil with your filter, you could just do the 15,000 mile oil.
Now, if you notice, I didn't mention earlier, but I almost forgot. I took a little bit of the old oil and moistened the O-ring around the filter to make sure it seals properly. And of course, you want to make sure on the oil filter mount itself that you didn't leave behind any grit or any pieces of the old O-ring. And while we're at it here, I'm just going to clean this off real quick. And make sure the old O-ring came off with the old filter. Now, like he was saying, this is 25,000 mile oil and it's a 15,000 mile filter, but in this case it's okay because the vehicle makes a lot of short trips and probably won't even put 15,000 miles on it in the next year. So the 1 year specification will be just fine. We'll be back out here changing it next March. Now I got it, the filter hand tight. And
just crank it in just a little bit.
Yeah, give it about a half a turn. Having a little problem here with the frame. So that's pretty good, I think. And next we'll fill the engine. If you've got a creeper, make sure you get it out of the way so you don't fall over it. Go ahead and take the drain plug out, or not drain plug, but fill plug. Get yourself a good funnel. And pour the remainder of the quart that I used to charge the oil filter in there. Now, some people have noticed that the oil looks thinner than the oil that they're used to, and it does appear that way, but that's because conventional oils have a lot of paraffin in them and makes them thick when they're cold. Amsoil doesn't have any paraffin in it since it's a pure synthetic, so it stays the same viscosity or thickness all the time. But if you're wondering why it seemed thinner, that's the reason. Now, some people have had experiences in the past with synthetics that weren't really full synthetics, that the engine started to leak more, or started to leak after they put the synthetic in, and that's because those oils weren't a full synthetic. And when they got warm and started to get thinned out, they started finding holes and seals and gaskets to leak through. You shouldn't notice any additional oil leakage with Amsoil. If you do have an oil leak, I suggest you take it to a professional and have it fixed. Not only for the sake of your own engine and your own pocketbook, but for the sake of the environment, if nothing else. So you're not leaking oil all over the place. Your fill cap back in place, and that's pretty much it. Now what we'll do is we'll back the car down off the stands. We'll take it for a little drive down to the gas station, put the performance improver in, fill the gas tank up, and we'll come back and put the car back up on the stands, check and make sure it's not leaking, make sure that the filter and drain plug are tight and torqued, and that'll be it.